In honor of Valentine's Day, I'm going to read chapter 1 of the Locke Box, which was the first novel that I published. And I just love the characters so much. Even when I just opened it up, I was thinking, oh, it's so, at least I will enjoy it. Thank you for giving it a try. Do you want to hear the dedication? Let's do this right. The dedication is as follows. The Locke Box is lovingly dedicated to my own Locke, who has been kind and sturdy and sexy for decades now. Thank you, Jeff, for making room in our home for all of my imaginary friends. And there's a bit of a preface. Landon. I'm not really sure how to begin this letter. It's one of those, if you're reading this, I must be dead. So, I'm sorry about that, brother. I need you to do 2 things for me. Chapter 1, the Locke family plot. See how I did that? Little play on words there. Cemetery plot of the story. I'm just going to read it. Okay. This is why you keep pedaling, because occasionally, this. With a foot planted on either side of my bike, I remove my helmet to congratulate myself on what lies at the end of this trail, an old cemetery, peculiar in its beauty and remote. So remote, I suspect it has fallen into disuse. It seems indecent to ride into such a place. I leave the woods on foot, blinking against sudden sunlight, wading knee-deep through the grass of several solemn acres. Mammoth brown headstones mark the graves, some of them ancient by American standards, and amassed in groups according to kin. At least that's what I'm gathering from the clusters of common surnames. There are several dead Lockes. As I explore, the garden's quietude begins to seduce my imagination. The tips of grass tickle my palms and spread gossip about me from hill to hill. Morning light filters through the sprawling oaks like ethereal stairways. Yeah, I'm really getting into it. I envision winged angels ascending to the heavens, having just plucked the recent dead. Oh, and the Spanish moss that drapes from the branches, tangled snakes, silent guardians of the reaper's process. When I come upon the next gravestone, Annabelle Locke's, I begin to wish that my imagination had not become such an active participant and that I had just stuck to considering the dead people's names as potential options for future children. Despite the serenity of the place, or maybe because of it, I find myself quite jumpy. So in an effort to ground myself, I chide the grave's unfortunate tenant out loud. It was creepy of you, Annabelle, to die on my birthday. Annabelle is not arguing. Even so, I make my sternest teacher face to tell her that yes, it was. Now that that's settled, I amble to the next outcropping. But when something unnatural slinks into my periphery, I spin my whole body around to confront it. A man's head has appeared over the top of Annabelle's stone, and I shriek. Maybe it was creepy of you, the head says, to be born on her death day. I choke back a flare of annoyance that follows the embarrassment that follows the fright. The head is clearly amused. It says, with some effort at decorum, I didn't mean to startle you. I was sitting back against the stone when you spoke. She was my great-great-grandmother. By this time, the head's whole body has risen into view, and the gravestone, which is nearly shoulder height for me, is hardly chest height for it. It holds out a hand for me to shake. Broad frame, nice cheekbones, strong evidence that it hasn't held a razor in days. I feel slightly more agreeable. I concede that it is certainly and solidly a living man. I think that before the spark of laughter, at my expense, gray clouds had overcast his summer green eyes. It's a lovely name, I manage, but I do not shake his hand. I haven't told it to you yet. He bestows a suggestive nod at the hand I am not shaking. I mean Annabelle, I say, your great-great-grandmother. Oh, right. and I'm Locke. Locke combs back layers of shoulder-length brown hair with the hand in contention, then reaches it out again. Well, Landon, he corrects, but everybody calls me Locke. I've always wanted hair like that. My wild mane is nearly untamable, and it is certainly orange. I'm annoyed all over again. In Texas, Locke says, as if he's educating a foreigner or a child, we shake hands when we meet. I put mine out, so, and then you grasp it. It's a sign of good faith. I regard the outstretched appendage and shake my head. No, I'm not going to. Not till you can give me a good excuse for walking around with hair like that. What? He laughs. He's unused to being declined. Of course he is. Look at him. All shiny and obedient and showing off your bone structure. I wave my water bottle at that bone structure and peruse it with a scowl. Anyway, we can't become acquainted with your great-great-grandmother's Gothic headstone standing between us. It's bad luck. Locke lifts his head up, but points his attention down at my feet. It's only bad luck for the person who's standing right on top of her, he says. I take a decisive step sideways and cut my eyes at him in a way that makes him chuckle. It's a really nice sound. After a moment, I say, You're not here to visit Annabelle. You couldn't be old enough to miss her. The cloudiness I'd noticed before now spreads across Locke's whole face. He makes a slight, seemingly involuntary motion that draws my gaze to a newer marker standing behind him. Now we know in part. Then we shall know in full, even as we are fully known. Aaron Alexander Locke. My brother, he says. I'm so sorry. Locke nods upward in acknowledgement. August 25th, I note. He died a year ago today. He doesn't reply. This is what he looks like when he's not trying. He's exquisite. I have to make the conscious decision not to stare. Locke redirects the conversation. What are you doing, roaming around a graveyard? I just stumbled upon it. I moved here a few weeks ago to teach sign language at the college, and I was out exploring on my bike. I thumb toward the trail that runs to campus. Then I step forward and offer my hand. Emma Kane. A quick study. Locke bloats the words with exaggerated delight. He clasps my hand and regains what I interpret as a pompous and possibly minutely attractive, if also infuriating air. He resumes his instruction. Now I say, it's nice to meet you, and you say, he raises a hand to his heart, Sir, believe me, the pleasure is all mine. I wait, straight-faced, for Locke to get over himself. Nothing, he asks. He appraises me from head to toe and back again. Okay, he says. But it doesn't mean okay. It means I accept. I like old cemeteries, I say, to better explain why I'm out here roaming. I enjoy reading the markers and wondering about their stories. Hesitantly, I add, it's probably more romantic when you don't have a face to go along with the name. Locke is quiet. I worry that I've upset him until he says, It didn't sound like you were wondering about their stories. It sounded like you were reprimanding them. I bite back a smile. I was not reprimanding them. Well, I was kind of reprimanding that one. You were totally reprimanding them. Your granny deserved it. Locke leans forward against Annabelle's stone and rests his chin in his hand. How do you figure? She died on my birthday, Locke, and that was rude. But like 100 years before you were born. Not the point. I whip my head to the side, my unruly hair flying along, and I keep my face cast away until there is no response, and I fall out of character to check on his reaction. His eyes are smiling at me in a way that makes me want to continue this ridiculous conversation for another few days. So I do. I got distracted from my real task, I say, of finding names for my baby, before I'd even found any that would fit him or her. And, by the way, I didn't realize I had an audience. I was enjoying the solitude. I haven't finished my stupid tirade before Locke's demeanor does a 180. Ah, he stalls. I misjudged this. He wags a finger between us. He consults his watch. I should get back to work. It was nice to meet you, Emma. Doesn't sound like it. Congratulations on the new baby and all that. What just happened? Oh, I'm not, I begin. Does he think I'm pregnant? He's already moved past the stone and past me when I realize, too late, that I've completely shut him down. I hadn't pegged him for the type to just forfeit. Of course, he is here to visit his deceased brother, and he obviously thinks that I'm otherwise committed. Before I can call him back to correct the misconception, no pun intended, the sound of hurtling rocks and spinning tires draws my focus away. An ivory-colored sedan appears fishtailing as it comes and speeds over the country lane toward us, generating a deluge of dust. It leaves the lane altogether, bumps onto the grass, narrowly missing the gravestones of 2 Houstons, and cuts close enough to the low branch of a live oak to take some Spanish moss for a rodeo ride. It then careens right at me, like it's aiming for me. I think the driver still has a foot on the gas. I make the instant decision to vault over Annabelle's grave marker to keep from being demolished. When the car crashes, it splits the stone into 3 great chunks with titanic noise. It stops just feet from where I've landed, inelegantly, on my backside. The muted echoes of Annabelle's splintering stone pulse through my head, and for a moment, I am sure I've gone deaf again. Even though I vaguely know it to be an odd thing to do, I lie down to welcome the quiet. But from what seems a long way off, one noise sinks through me. The panic of Locke's voice as he sprints toward the place where I lie. I don't want to be the reason for that. He's ordering me to open my eyes, so I do. Locke nearly falls on top of me in his haste to make sure I'm all right and runs his hands over me to check for damage. He searches my eyes with such ferocity that it has the effect of steadying me. He nods, as if we've shared words, and rushes out of my orbit again. I swallow, rise to my feet, and follow. The front of the car is crunched. The hood is crumpled onto itself, and the windshield is a spider web of cracks. Wrenching the driver's door open, Locke comes to an abrupt halt. He goes ashen, glances into the back seat, glances at me, and moves to block me from view. I may be able to help, I protest. I was an EMT for a few years. Then come quickly, he says, and moves out of the way. It's not good. The woman in the driver's seat is going to die. I do not say this out loud, but her skin is purpling and her lips are turning blue. When Locke steps out of her view, her eyes rove for him wildly, and she babbles a frantic mixture of phrases in English that keep slipping into Spanish, like she can't keep the English turned on right now. I'm fluent in American Sign Language. Spanish, not so much. But the woman slaps at me when I try to assess her. It becomes clear that she's distressed about the well-being of her backseat occupant. Locke's already stretched across, fumbling with the car seat latches. He brings out a small pink bundle of a baby, dead, or unconscious, or asleep. I don't know. Let me see her, I insist. He places the infant into my arms, then bites his thumbnail while I work. The pulse is strong. There's no blood, no sign of trauma. The child opens her dark, almond-shaped eyes and reaches for my cheek. I honestly think she slept through it. How? Here she is, Mama, I tell the woman. Look, she's doing fine. I smooth the child's wispy black hair. Her head nearly fits into the palm of my hand. I try to remember how old my nephews were when they were this small. 5 months? 6? We're going to take good care of her, okay? Now let me take care of you. Locke reaches for the baby so that I can help the woman, but as I said, she is going to die. I'm sorry she's going to die. I reach in to try to help her, and she grips my arm. Him, she pleads. Him. A litany of slurred Spanish phrases tell me she's about to lose consciousness. Locke nudges me aside and presses the baby to her chest. The woman is crying. She's so beautiful. Dark hair, dark skin. She tries to wrap an arm around the baby, but she's losing control of her motor function. Locke positions the woman's arms around the baby and physically embraces both mother and child. The woman leans her head back to gaze at him. The muscles around her eyes relax. Like Locke is her final consolation. And then she dies. No, I cry, your baby. I tug Locke out of the way. I unlock the woman's seatbelt and drag her out of the car. I swear she's already getting cold. I start CPR. I plead with her to wake. What did you take? I scream. There aren't any real abrasions. I don't think she died from the wreck. She's more purple now than before. Don't leave your baby. 3 minutes. 5. I'm heaving mightily into the chest compressions as if I can force the life back into her. I feel a strong arm around my middle. Locke is pulling me off of the woman with one arm, and he's holding the baby with the other. Even so, I struggle against him. She has to stay, I tell him. Emma, I can't break his restraint. She's gone. Let her go. I surrender with an exasperated exhale, and he releases me to sit back on my heels. I'm staring at the woman. I drop my head. Take the baby, he says, and I do. He fishes his phone from the pocket of his jeans. While I cradle the child, he dials 911. The hot, sticky morning is becoming a hotter, stickier day. I seek relief in the shade of a tree, but my legs are unsteady, and I stumble, drawing a sharp look of concern from the man who's now asking for assistance. He exhibits amazing poise. I carefully sit down with the baby and rock her, willing my voice to remain calm and sweet. I keep stealing glances at the bizarre scene. Locke pacing among the gravestones, phone to his ear, in front of the crashed hood of a car beside which this child's mother. I draw a stabilizing breath and wonder if the feeling that I'm floating means I'm in shock. Locke ends the call and comes to kneel before me. How is she? He asks. His voice anchors me back to earth. She's fine, as far as I can tell, alert, responsive. As if to disagree, the baby begins to cry. He presses a long finger into her tiny hand, and she latches onto it with all of her own. You're not hurt? He asks. When Locke lifts his face to me in question, I realize he's asking me and not simply placating the child. Your own baby's okay, he prompts. Oh. A moment of levity. Locke, I didn't mean to imply that I had a child on the way. I'm not pregnant. I'm not even seeing anybody. I just like to consider names in case, someday. I wave my hand when I say someday. He gives me another once-over, his eyes landing on the bike shorts that leave little room for an expanding uterus. Yeah, you don't look pregnant. He shakes his head. I mean, yes. No, you just look... He searches for an appropriate phrase and comes up with the opposite of pregnant. What is that supposed to mean? Locke puckers his lips in consternation, or maybe to stop them from making more words. It makes me laugh outright, if only to ease my nerves, and that makes him laugh too. You know good and well what I mean. And yes, he hurries to say, you would still be attractive if you were pregnant as a peach. He balances his forehead on his fingers. I think the trauma has made me stupid. Do you hear that, baby? I coo to the child. Landon Locke is not so full of clever words right now. I lean closer to confide. It can be intimidating to have strong and capable women like us around. The baby grabs hold of my mouth. And Locke rolls his eyes, but there's a smile in them. It doesn't take long for the severity of the situation to reassert itself. How long do you think it will take the police? I ask. I can't bear for that woman to have to lie there. Let's sit on the other side of the tree, Locke suggests. He hops up and helps me to my feet. Standing before him, I take a moment to scrutinize his handsome face. What is it? He asks. Did you see the way she looked at you in the end?